so I'm not going to really make the fundamental tote that small. But I did want to shrink it down a little bit because I have these amazing metal handles and I wanted to make it small enough to be able to use just these without any straps. So I took the pattern and I messed around with the print settings and I shrunk it down to 85%, and I think it's going to be perfect for these handles. For the interior, I'm using a cotton woven and I'm just going to do a slip pocket with an accent. I have my main lining panels. For the exterior, I have my main body pieces. I have my handle hardware, and then we'll need 2 pieces to connect the D-rings to that. To attach the handles, we're going to use the template that you can purchase with the handles. It's a collaboration between myself and Kesia at SiahSwag that fits these handles just perfect. So I have drawn my center line and I have made a mark of where I want my handle placement to be. And I just kind of used my handle as a guide to measure where I wanted my handle to sit. So I know that the top is going to fold over and we want to have enough room for our hand to fit. So I think about 1.5 inches down is going to be a good placement for our handles. Take your template and line up the center mark on the template with the center mark that you've made on your workspace, and then line up these flat areas with the line that we drew for our placement. So just like so, we're going to mark the angles and the top line. So just like that. Using a craft knife, cut along the bottom of the lines that we just drew. So that will give us this little flap here. Goes through to the back side. If you're using a thinner vinyl, you may want to add a piece of interfacing, whether it's woven or a Decaville light equivalent, and just add it to that area where you're going to cut out the D-ring. So then we can do the same thing. We can line it up, line up our center marks, and mark everything on here. That way you just have a little bit more structure in the area where the handle is going to go. So there we have this one with our little tab that goes all the way through. I also have made a mark here to add my nameplate. And since this one is at 85%, I took the measurements that I have in the pattern and I just took 85% of that measurement and got the marking for this. So you can either multiply it to find the percentage for it, or you can just simply ask Google, hey Google, what's 85% of 4.5? And it will give you the measurement from the pattern. We can set this aside for now. And we want to take the tabs that we're going to use to connect our handles. So just like a hidden D-ring, we're going to need a tab to connect. The area of the handle is 2.75, so we're going to fold it in half, and that's cut at 5.5 wide by about 6 long. The length doesn't really matter as much. You just want to make sure that you have the correct width. Mark a line down the center of both tabs. I've added double-sided tape next to those lines, and we're going to fold over to meet that line in the center. So then we can double check to make sure that this is going to fit right in the inside of our handles. Now let's top stitch down each side of the connector piece. Now take your connector piece and we are going to put it in right side up and pull about 1/3 of the way through. And it should be a snug fit, but not too tight. Flip up so that we have our creased side facing up. And we'll want this to stay tucked in here. We're going to flip it over and stitch along the top edge right across the cut line without going past the edges of our connector, or you'll see those stitches. Drop your needle right at that edge, and we want to make sure that this is pretty straight. Now we want to add our handle and tuck this remaining bit into the slit. So make sure this tab is pulled along the bottom, and we want to get it as tight as we can on the handle. This vinyl is a little sticky, so it's kind of hard to slide. You can see in the side here there's still a bit of a gap, so we just want to make sure that that is pushed in all the way. So once you have it tucked in all the way, make sure this little flap is tucked in really well, and flip up your main body piece. We want to push this up as far as we can to the handle and stitch along this little flap right here. And get as close as we can to that strip as possible. So flip it over, lay it all flat, double check everything looks good. So you should have our first line of stitching across the bottom. Then you should have another line of stitching that goes through your tab and your connector piece, and that's going to hold everything together. And you can now use your template to make marks for rivets. There's an option for 1 in the center. If you wanted to do 2, you use the 2 markers, or if you wanted to do 3, go 3, 3, and 3. I'm going to do 2 for this one. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to line up the flat edge with the folded line. And your end marks here should be even with your vinyl on your handles. So line everything up, make marks for 2, punch your holes on the marks, and then we just need to set the rivets. And let me tell you a little story about these rivets. I have had this bag idea in my mind since the MarathonSewciety decided to do the fundamental tote. And when I went to get started on this bag, I realized I had 0 rainbow rivets. So I reached out to everyone that I knew locally to see if they had any, because of course, you know, I was sitting down to record now and I didn't have it. And my good friend Annette said, yes, I have some, but she lives about 3 hours away with traffic. So I reached out to another friend and she had some, but she's about the same distance as Tandy, and I realized about that time that we could make it to Tandy before they closed. So it took a 2-hour and 15-minute round trip to Tandy to get these rainbow rivets for this bag. But I really think it was worth it. I mean, this rainbow hardware is to die for. I think it's really pulling this bag together, and I'm really loving the rainbow lately. I am feeling a little crazy for driving so far though, so tell me, would you have done it? So now we have both exteriors completed. We want to lay them right sides together. And we're going to stitch across the bottom first. This vinyl is a little sticky. So line those up. Add a couple clips. And let's stitch across the bottom. Let's fold this bottom open, crease these flaps. And then let's top stitch down each side of that seam, holding the flaps open, or holding the seam allowance to their right sides. The glare from the light is so strong on this one, but now we have our two panels connected with the seam in the middle. We are going to, let's put those right side together, line up the side edges, clip that, and clip this all the way together to the bottom. We're going to stitch down both sides of the panels. Now let's box our corners. Butterfly open the side seams. And I like to pull it back about an inch or two up. And line up those seams to match in the raw edge. Add a couple clips. We'll do the same for this side. Butterfly open the seams, press that seam back about an inch or so down, line up those bottom seams in raw edge. Add a couple clips. And let's stitch these side ends together. So we have our bag now stitched together. I want to trim off the seam allowance on the bottom corner, trim off the seam allowance on the bottom corners, and then I want to trim it off on the sides as well, but let's leave the top inch where we drew that top line. This bag was written as a drop-in lining. So before we turn it out, we can go ahead and add our double-sided tape around the top edge. Open up the side flaps. So you get all the way back around to where we started. So we can peel back that double-sided tape. Fold down our raw edge to meet the line that we drew, which is the same measurement as in the pattern. I did not change any of that. I'm adding a couple clips as we go around just to keep everything in place. Now we can set that aside and work on the lining. For our lining slip pocket, just want to fold it in half, right sides together, add a couple clips, and stitch down the sides. Trim the corners down right at the edge. And turn this inside or right side. Poke your corners out first. And press everything. If you're using cotton, you can take it right to the iron and give it a good press. And I want to baste along the top to keep this nice and straight together. I'm going to add a vinyl accent to this pocket. I did not change the dimensions for the height of this. I just changed the length to match the pocket. To get the dimensions for this pocket, I just did 85% of the original pattern piece as well for this. So you can either shrink it with the pattern piece when you print it, or you can multiply and get the exact numbers and cut it down. If you come out to a slightly weird number, I just round up or down to the closest 1/8 inch. Going to peel off the shorter side and lay that right against that line. Push everything flat. And do this side and fold it over. So this is going to be our front side, and the back is supposed to hang down just a little bit further, and that's just to help you when you top stitch along this front piece. It will keep you from falling off on the back piece. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2 lines of stitching along the bottom and the top of this pocket. I'm going to trim off the excess on the side. Now we can grab one of our lining pieces, mark our centers. So I've marked my center of my pocket here. I want to mark so we can line up this center, and I'm going to go about 1.5 inches down. Should be good. Maybe 1 3/4 inches down. Let's go 1 3/4 inches down. And I'm going to stitch this pocket on. I decided not to split this pocket just so that you could still fit a phone in long ways. Let's take our 2 sides together, line up the bottom, couple clips, and stitch that together. A majority of this next bit is just doing the same thing that we did for the exterior and I wanted to take a minute to talk about the Marathon Society. I mentioned it earlier, and this video is part of a marathon that is taking place today, organized by the Marathon Society. And what they do is they choose a pattern, and a group of sewists get together and make videos all day long of the same pattern. And what I love the most about this is being able to see the variety and differences that people can create from one pattern. And when I designed this pattern, that is exactly what I had envisioned. I wanted a fundamental skill building pattern that people could take and add their own twist on it once they learned the basic elements. The marathon today has 10 others participating in it. So that's 10 different ways that you can see this pattern made, different fabric types, different techniques, different personalities, so many unique things. I'm going to make sure to link the Marathon Society link tree in the description. It will take you today to the 10 others that are participating, along with links to their YouTube, their channels, their Instagram. So please take the time today to go visit them, show appreciation for them volunteering to support other small businesses. The link tree will also update for the next event, so you can subscribe to the link tree to be notified when the next event's going to happen, and then you can see the next pattern that's chosen. Before I stitch this together, I'm going to trim some of this down so we don't have that inside of the bag. We're going to take our lining, and I like my slip pocket to be on the back side, so that's going to be without our tag. Stick it inside for exterior. Line up our side seams first. I think I want to add a magnet. So I'm going to take this lining piece out. Let's do that real quick. Just that way it'll hold it shut, 'cause those handles are a little heavy, so I don't want it to flop open. So if I take the edges and I line those up, can pull this out and get my center point. So I'm just going to put a small little mark there, line up this side, small little mark here with my chalk. You probably want it about an inch down. But I don't want it to hit my foot. So I'm going to put it, let's see, the circle of the bracket. So the center will be about 3/4 of an inch down. That way it just sits right below that mark there. So there's one side. Let's do this side. We'll do center first so I don't lose that. Three-quarters. So now we can take our little bracket guy, make our marks. take a craft knife and just make small little marks. Okay. I want the flat side of the magnet to be over here on the back, which is our slit pocket side. Add the washer. And this side. All right, now we can go back and add this into the exterior. So let's see which side. This is going to go to the back, the pocket. Stick everything down in there. Now we have a magnet. Perfect. Can line up our centers, our edges, or side seams rather. I know drop-in linings can seem rather daunting, but just give it a try. I promise you, once you get the hang of it, it's absolutely worth it. It really reduces the amount of wrinkles that you get on the exterior from having to turn it through the pocket. And yes, having a cylinder arm does make it pretty convenient to do the top stitching. You can also put books underneath a semi-industrial to kind of raise up your machine to give a cylinder arm technique. Or you can also flip from the inside and stitch from the inside and do the same thing. It's still one less turn. As always, I'll link everything down in the description below. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I really hope you enjoyed the fundamental tote at 85% and look forward to seeing your makes as well.